for the researchers. Now, basically, the tournaments I've been running over the last couple of years have kind of varied in sizes and durations. Kind of a typical one that we would run through is basically a two-day event where we get a group together of this side, management from large companies, executive education classes, and we walk through this process where, in the beginning we just individually generate ideas, and you could quickly think of kind of 5-10 ideas you submit to my Darwinator, and within very little time and effort we can have a couple of hundred opportunities out of a group like this one. We send it through the web-based system. We then do the American Idol, where everybody gets like 90 seconds to say, well, look, my name is Christian, my idea is ABC, and basically then we start sticker voting on those. Around then the winning ones, we start forming little teams, and at the end of the workshop we have typically a handful of ideas that will then be moved to the next level of funding or business development. And again, I cannot tell you how often you listen to those first pitches. And it is like American Idol in that sense, right? Where most people watch out the first round, not for the quality of the music, but for the sake of embarrassment of the candidate. And the beginning is just awful, right? But then the power of the process is really such that as you go through this process, it really gets you some outstanding ideas at the end. Now, really, let me speak the second part of my presentation. Let me speak a little bit of what I've learned doing these tournaments, and talk a little about how you run these tournaments successfully. If you believe in my metaphor, where we have kind of a continuum of qualities of distribution that we kind of start drawing here, and really only being after these exceptional opportunities, my argument is going to be that there are 4 things that you can do to run better tournaments. You can get more ideas, you can get better ideas, you can get higher diversity or higher variance ideas, and you can do a better job at evaluating these ideas. So let me speak 1 minute about each of these levels. The first one here is as an academic, I've derived the optimal formula, right? I mean, we get paid to do weird stuff, right? And so there's a simple mathematical kind of thought here that I hope you buy in, is as you generate more ideas, by the law of statistics, the best idea out of these many ideas has to be better the more you have, right? The tallest person living in New York is much taller than the tallest person living in Harrisburg, right? You just randomly draw out of a population, and the more draws you get, the better the best. Now, since there is at some point diminishing returns, but it costs you something to generate these ideas, it's kind of an optimal point where you should stop, right? The economist would say marginal returns, marginal cost. But the good news is we don't have to worry about this. My argument is that in any setting I've ever worked in, the cost of generating the ideas were so low that you could, regardless of how many ideas you consider right now, you could easily double and triple that number, and you would still be way, way too little on that kind of amount of innovation that you're doing. Let me just kind of give you a concrete example here. I ran a workshop with Ingersoll Rand recently, where we kind of spent basically a day on coming up with ideas. And as part of that workshop, I always like to think about the following question: is how much does it cost me to generate one idea? Right? And what's the price sticker for one idea? And there are some settings. The cheapest ones I found is like naming pharmaceutical products. So there, I can get you $10 per idea and cheaper. The most expensive one I've worked with a not-to-be-named famous audit and accounting firm, and getting these partners come up with ideas at the same time making huge amounts of wages. That was probably like $1,000 per idea. Most of the idea generation processes I've worked in, for a couple of $100, you're going to get a new idea. Now think about that for a moment. If you, for a couple of $100, you could just generate another idea, would you want to generate like at least 1,000 or so, right? I mean, it's so cheap at the generation point that it's really all about volume. Now, once you have that volume, the second thing is really kind of what can you do to come up with better ideas? Now, I've bad news for us on that front. So given that I have that Darwinator software, I can measure for every person playing in my tournaments, I can measure how good of an idea generator you are. And the bad news is most of us are not good. Sorry, right? You know, and I think it's kind of one of these American political correctness things that you're not allowed to say somebody is not creative because we all feel like we're super creative. The reality is not all of us are good distance runners, not all of us are good singers, and not all of us are good idea generators. Just, you know, live with that. There's nothing wrong. What we see when we run these tournaments is really very often the persons who get the best idea are also very likely to have a couple of other ideas way up there. There's just some people who are really, really good at that. Now that's interesting from a management perspective, right? That means that your job as a manager is kind of potentially get over that reality that your ideas might not be the best ideas. But your job might be really finding the one person in your company who is a good generator and just mine that person over and over again. In that consulting setting I just mentioned earlier on, one of the things that we found is that the best ideas tend to come from what we call the edges of the organization, the front line, the people, just as you said, the people in touch with the patient, or these guys with their clients. The people who are out there on the front line, these guys innovate all the time, be it a doctor or a nurse, they innovate every day. Now the question then is, for me as a manager, how do I leverage that? How do I make use of the fact that I have so many innovative employees? And the tool that we came up there with Deloitte was this idea of what we called an edge-core edge innovation. The logic was we have to take the ideas from the edges because that's where the best innovation is happening. We want to bring them to the core because if the ideas just stay at the edges, we're not gaining scale, right? I mean, I want that nurse not to just find a better way of turning a patient in the bed. I want the other 5,000 nurses also learn about that great technique, right? And so you get the ideas submitted through the central reservoir, through the tournament to the core. In the core, you do the evaluations, where you basically start seeing, which ideas do I really want to roll out, and then you broadcast them back to the edges, and that way you really get the volume and the repetition that we know and love from operations. Now, another interesting tournament I want to talk about briefly is the Gates Foundation, and these guys are in a wonderful position that I think all of us would love to be in. They have so much money that they just don't know what to do with it. So they run this innovation tournament now that is called One Great Idea plus 2 pages equals $100,000. And so where you literally submit 2 pages of a proposal, and if you get funded, you get $100,000, no questions asked. They get, tempting as this deal is, they get 3,000 ideas submitted every year, and they just don't know how to evaluate it, right? And so at some point they came up with this really, really elegant solution I found, is they basically have people sit there with a set of stickers, and so you get endowed a set of golden stickers and a set of silver stickers. And if I put a golden sticker on that as one of the reviewers, it gets funded, no matter what the others think. If I put a silver sticker on it, if it gets another silver sticker from another judge, it gets funded, no question asked. Everything else gets rejected. Is this accurate? No. But if you want to generate 3,000 ideas, you don't want to set up a business planning committee to evaluate every one of them. Right? As we start talking about high volume ideation, I have to accept that any form of idea evaluation is going to be quick and dirty. Otherwise, I just cannot afford it. What they then do in the second round is they take these ideas, and once you have proven preliminary effectiveness of that innovation in the field, then they come and write the big checks. Right? So I thought that is a really elegant way of measuring very quick and dirty, but really that's the only way that you can accommodate the high level. And now the last action I want to leave you with, the last action is one that for me as an operations person is quite painful to accept, right? Because as an operations person I've told my students variance is your enemy, right? Control variation, Six Sigma, right? That's what we've been preaching. The problem is in innovation it's the opposite. If I give you the choice between 10 nurses, one of them is really outstanding and the other 9 are a danger to the patient, versus 10 really good nurses, you pick the 10 really good nurses. If I give you the choice between one outstanding idea and 9 that are really terrible versus 10 good ideas, you pick the variance, right? You pick the one where you have the outlier. So in innovation, the variance is your friend. And I think the challenge for us means, therefore, that we have to overcome the way that we expect, where our view of where these ideas are coming from, our kind of built-in mental frames that we say, well, the next great idea in automotive engineering comes from Toyota or GM or MIT. Turns out that the winner of the Tour de Sol, which is one of the most prestigious eco races in the country and one of the finalists in the X Prize, is a high school that is just out here in West Philadelphia. Now, if you're not familiar with West Philadelphia, it's not necessarily the area that you want to explore tonight. This is a really, really rough area. But interestingly, these kids, together with a very dedicated science teacher, are winning the Tour de Sol. Now, that is what I mean with high variance. You have to go over, as you think about new opportunities, new ideas, it's not necessarily from Penn or from the big players where these ideas are coming from. It takes a certain willingness to search broadly. And so that's, again, my encouragement as you go through that speed dating exercise tomorrow. You're going to have 10 encounters. Some of them you might look at, say, this is never going to work. Well, high variance is your friend, right? I mean, what you're after is 1 or 2 great matches. If what you get out of tomorrow are 10 nice conversations, we have not done our job, right? I mean, you want the one exceptional one, not the many. With that, I hope you have a great day tomorrow, and it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you very much.